Egypt is rightly associated with the origin of human civilization. The Egyptian pyramid texts, first attested during the reign of Unas circa 2350 BCE, represent the world's oldest corpus of religious texts, and as such they constitute a key resource for anyone trying to reconstruct the origins of cosmogonic myth and religion. And as we have been arguing for 4 decades now, they are also essential for reconstructing the recent history of the solar system. Among the many puzzles presented by the pyramid text is the fact that so many of the astral references clearly describe catastrophic events. The peculiar traditions surrounding the Eye of Horus represent a case in point, the latter constituting one of the most enduring and enigmatic symbols in all of ancient Egypt. Interpretation is made difficult by the fact that early Egyptian texts describing the eye and other astral agents never present a coherent narrative proceeding from A to B. Rather, the pyramid and coffin texts are distinguished by brief allusions to catastrophic events believed to be well known to the audience. Such allusions are typically reported in a riddling or obscure fashion, and thus the modern researcher finds himself in the position of a psychoanalyst trying to interpret a dreamlike reverie in order to solve an underlying puzzle. A typical passage is the following, quote, "I am the fiery Eye of Horus, which went forth terrible, lady of slaughter, greatly awesome, who came into being in the flame of the sunshine, to whom Ra granted appearings in glory. What Ra said about her, mighty is the fear of you, great is the awe of you, mighty is your striking power. All men have been put in the sleep of death because of you and through your power." End of quote. In a Middle Kingdom text known as the Destruction of Mankind, the Eye is said to have waged a war against earthlings. There we read that the Eye, as the goddess Hathor, was dispatched by Ra to punish mankind who had evidently rebelled against his rule. Quote, "Then mankind plotted something in the very presence of Ra. Then they, Ra's advisors, said in the presence of his majesty, quote, 'May the Eye be sent, that it may catch for thee them who scheme with evil things. It should go down as Hathor.' So then this goddess came and slew mankind in the desert." End of quote. The destructive campaign against mankind was commonly mythologized as a bloodbath waged by the warrior goddess Hathor or her alter ego Sekhmet. Indeed, in that same text we read, quote, "Hathor will wade in the blood of mankind as Sekhmet." End of quote. How then do Egyptologists understand the Eye of Horus? Most Egyptologists recognize in the eye a symbol of the sun. Thus, Katja Gibbs suggested the eye's rampage was a description of sunrise. Quote, "Elsewhere I have suggested that this episode, the bloodbath associated with the eye's rampage, may be related to the daily reddening of the sky at dawn, which in Egyptian terms coincides with the slaying of the solar enemies. The return of the goddess would then represent the rising of the sun, which coincides with the redness in the sky. The periods during which the goddess is absent would, accordingly, correspond to the nighttime." End of quote. At no time does Gibbs or any other Egyptologist ever offer a plausible explanation for how we are to understand the catastrophic elements in the eye's myth. In the pyramid and coffin text, the Eye of Horus is never explicitly identified with any one celestial body. How then are we to go about discovering its original referent? Dave Talbot's genius consisted in his ability to decipher these obscure texts and visualize what the ancient skywatchers were seeing and attempting to describe. Anyone who has read Symbols of an Alien Sky or viewed his videos depicting the ancient Egyptian sky will know what I mean. My collaboration with Dave began in the early 1980s, shortly after the publication of the groundbreaking work, The Saturn Myth. During that period, we co-authored a trilogy of articles discussing the Eye of Horus. As strange and improbable as the Egyptian traditions attached to the eye appear to the modern reader, we were able to point to early texts in Mesopotamia that describe the planet goddess Inanna in analogous terms, i.e. as a terrifying agent of sky-borne disaster, one prone to assuming the form of a fire-spewing serpent and wading in the blood of mankind. It was in the guise of a serpent dragon, according to the Sumerian text known as the Exaltation of Inanna, that the warmongering goddess rained fire from heaven. Quote, "Like a dragon you have deposited venom on the land. When you roar at the earth like thunder, no vegetation can stand up to you, raining the fanned fire down upon the nation. When mankind comes before you in fear and trembling at your tempestuous radiance." End of quote. Virtually identical imagery is to be found in early literary accounts of the Semitic goddess Ishtar, who, like the Sumerian Inanna, was explicitly identified with the planet Venus. The following passage is representative. Quote, "I rain battle down like flames in the fighting. I make heaven and earth shake with my cries. I constantly traverse heaven, then I trample the earth. I destroy what remains of the inhabited world." End of quote. Here, as in the Sumerian hymns describing Inanna, it is the planet Venus that is raining fire and destruction from the sky. The celestial context of the imagery in question could hardly be more patently obvious or unequivocal. The parallels between the Egyptian and Sumerian traditions are evident and extend to the finest details. The Eye of Horus and Inanna are each described as running amok and threatening to destroy mankind. Both are described as wading in blood, and both are described as celestial dragons raining fire and flood from the sky. How then are we to explain the similarities between the respective traditions? The all-decisive datum is offered by the identification of Inanna with the planet Venus, attested already in the very earliest texts from Urka, circa 3000 BC, i.e. well before the pyramid texts or Inanna hymns were composed. Hence it follows, given the indisputable resemblance between the Eye of Horus and Inanna, that the eye must be identified with the planet Venus. Dave and I were able to bolster this identification by showing that the planet Venus was identified with an eye around the globe. A common name for Venus among the Maya was Nohoch-Ich, Great Eye. Polynesian islanders, justly renowned for their long-distance voyages across unknown oceans by following the stars, knew Venus as Great Eye. So too the Aboriginal Ringa-Ringaroo of Australia knew Venus as Great Eye. Now I ask, would anyone looking up at the distant speck that is Venus today be inclined to view it as an eye or as a raging serpent or warrior goddess? Over the course of several decades, Dave and I conducted an extensive survey of the archaic pictographs and hieroglyphs employed to describe the Eye of Horus and/or Inanna, documenting numerous comet-like forms. The earliest pictograph that served as the name of Inanna Venus was the so-called Moosh sign. The resemblance to a comet is evident at once. The various symbols employed to describe the Eye of Horus include several very similar to the Moosh sign: lock of hair, curl, beard, Uraeus serpent, seshad, fillet, rope. After reviewing this evidence, we concluded that the raging eye goddess was actually Venus while presenting a comet-like appearance. It goes without saying that the historical reconstruction offered by Talbot and myself is jarring at first. It involves nothing less than a radical reinterpretation of Earth history and emphasizes the catastrophic origins of human civilization. Where Egyptologists see the Eye of Horus as the familiar sun moving peacefully around the sky, we see the eye as a comet-like Venus on a catastrophic orbit threatening the world with destruction. Where Egyptologists see metaphor, Jan Assmann, a leading Egyptologist, identified the eye as the plenitude of life force, we see concrete language describing witnessed history and towering celestial forms. Where conventional Egyptologists look to modern astronomical records for clues in how to explain away the ancient skywatchers' explicit testimony about catastrophic planetary events, we look to the testimony of ancient skywatchers for clues on how to develop a more evidence-based recent history of the solar system so that modern textbooks can be revised accordingly. Such, in short, is the challenge to modern science presented by my recently published book, Egypt Under the Stars, which offers a thorough reappraisal of ancient Egyptian astronomical traditions.